Libros Schmibros is a podcast exploring the people, books, movies, and ideas that Angelinos care about in a thoughtful way that even New Yorkers can understand. We're coming to you from Libros Schmibros, our nonprofit bilingual lending library in Boyle Heights, on the west coast of the country and the east bank of the mighty Los Angeles River.
My name is Cuauhtemoc Hernandez. This is the Libros Schmibros podcast. And today's guest, we have artist and founder of LA streetwear label Total Luxury Spa, as well as creative studio Commonwealth Projects. The artist is Daniel Desure. And thank you for joining us, Daniel. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Cool. So I was mentioning earlier before we started recording, one of the reasons why I was really excited to get you on this interview was because we like to reach out to storytellers, and you're the first streetwear label that we reached out to because a lot of your work is narrative based, and I've read that you use the term fiction-based reality for some of your work. So for those who aren't familiar with Total Luxury Spa, can you give us a quick summary of what your work is and what your objectives are with the label?
Yeah, there's kind of a lot to unpack there. So we'll kind of go through it like bit by bit, I guess. You mentioned streetwear, and it's funny because in a lot of ways, we don't maybe think of ourselves as sort of like in streetwear. I think it's an avenue that we've kind of like fallen into a little bit, and we're kind of dabbling in. But, I think we're of the belief that we could also next year, it might not be shirts and clothing. It could be something completely different, maybe more conceptual, out in the world. So I think right now, the world of streetwear is interesting. It's a way to kind of it's a delivery method, I guess, if you will. So it's a way of kind of like getting a message across to a lot of people really quickly. And it's really interesting for us. I think we kind of stumbled upon it. In some sense, we don't come from any sort of clothing or streetwear background. And I think it was one of those things where we designed a handful of shirts years ago. They were sitting on the server here in the studio for a long time. I came across them again and I was like, oh man, we should really do something with these. We put a couple out. We made some samples basically. Just so happens those samples made it onto an amazing artist named Khalil Joseph, who wore them in New York Times, and it sort of like blew up from there. People started hitting us up and asking us where they could get them. And then sort of like the messaging, I was like, oh wow, this is really, it was just an incredibly powerful tool to kind of like get a message out there. So I was like, okay, well, what's the message? What are we about? And so that's kind of how the whole thing started. The fiction, what's that?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the fiction-based reality stuff, that was one specific collection that we did. I want to say it was last year, I think, earlier this year or last year. And, it kind of dabbled into sort of our conceptual thinking a little bit. And before we jumped on, you and I were chatting a little bit about Mike Davis, and he's definitely like a big inspiration for us. This idea of, you mentioned excavating the future. That's definitely something that we're interested in. We're both kind of like, we're interested in the history of Los Angeles, sort of characters and figures that have come out of Los Angeles and sort of political history and things like that of LA, and people of the past that were kind of trying to change the status quo and kind of shift dynamics a little bit here in LA, politically speaking. And in some ways kind of playing with that idea. So I think with Spa, it's really about kind of designing sort of these like utopian ideas of the future, and sort of playing with the idea of like, why is that not a reality right now? Can we make it a reality? Can we make it look like a reality? And then sort of back real characters into it. This idea that, you can kind of make things up a little bit the way that you want to see them in the world. And then when people start asking questions, they get really excited, they wear it, things like that. There's questions that start popping up. And then we start backing it into kind of real characters, So, part of the Crenshaw wellness element, it was sort of a made up kind of concept, this sort of like wellness center. And then we started backing real characters into it. People like Mr. Wisdom, who had a kind of a vegan restaurant here. And so the proceeds from that shirt also go back into the people that helped back it. So the proceeds from that shirt went to him. And so, it's just this idea that we can kind of make up the world the way we want to see it. the way that we believe it should be. And, you know, just kind of a bit more of a fair landscape, I guess, if you will. And then, you know, when people start asking the questions, you can start backing in kind of real elements to it and kind of make it a reality. We start sort of like, you know, it's almost like that thing, kind of fake it till you make it a little bit, like where we kind of come up with the ideas of the way that we want to see the world. And then we start making it a reality afterwards in a way. So it's a little bit of, I guess, you know, kind of conceptual thinking. And right now, like I said, you know, it takes the form of t-shirts and clothing, but who knows, like next year, it could be something completely different. You know, when we started, we started in kind of publications, you know, zines and things like that, and kind of backing young artists that we believe in that didn't necessarily have gallery representation, things like that. My studio would kind of fund those projects. And with those projects, we do, say, a series of talks in the studio. We do a series of, say, meditation workshops, things like that. And so we just started kind of, you know, just kind of backing these things that we kind of wanted to see in the world that we weren't seeing enough of, and figuring out ways of making those a reality. So we did a whole summertime film series. So those are kind of things that, like, they could come back, you know, the clothing thing could take a back seat, and there could be an emphasis more on kind of like the film element, say, or a talk series and things like that. So I think I answered some of the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we'll, yeah, it's like you said, it's a lot to unpack. So I want to kind of touch on some of the points you made, because you mentioned the series, the fiction-based reality. You had Crenshaw Wellness, and you also, can you talk a little bit about some of those other designs that you made? I'm not sure if it was part of the same series, but you had the Earth Embassy, Radical Nests. So you kind of create like these alternate realities, like utopian future. It's I guess it would be described as even like Afrofuturism, because you're inserting you know, Black figures, Black historical figures also into these worlds. Can you talk a little bit about some of those worlds that you did, that y'all created?
Yeah, so Hassan, you know, designed most of those shirts. Justin did some of those as well. And, you know, there's a few different shirts. So say you take like Flora, for instance. Flora was this interesting shirt that we did, which was all about sort of plants. I think it said something like, you know, what was it? Like plants for hurt landscapes, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have one here, actually. Hold on. It said, I got one here. It says arrangements and ecology. And then on the back, it says, where is it? Healing plants for hurt landscapes, right? Yeah. And so, you know, this was one shirt that we did that's going to kind of turn into a series that's all about sort of plants, specifically like Los Angeles plants. You know, Los Angeles has many different kind of landscapes here. There's plants from all over the place, and it's really interesting. We had done a project with Mocha a few years ago where we helped them kind of redesign their plaza in the front of the museum. And with that project, we worked with some incredible characters that helped bring in and teach us about kind of the local plants. We wanted to use all local plants from the mountains, from the ocean, from the desert, things like that. So
this is a Little Tokyo, the Little Tokyo
exactly.
Mocha, right? Oh.
Exactly. And so through that project, we got to know quite a bit about kind of the local plant kind of landscape. And we wanted to do a shirt around that idea, and this idea that, you know, coming up with sort of like a faux kind of plant service, I guess, if you will. And so right now, for instance, that's kind of like a made up theme that will back into kind of real characters moving forward. So there's a couple pieces that we're designing now that'll come out probably in about 6 months, 4 or 5, 6 months. That'll have some real characters that specifically LA based people and some foundations that are doing some incredible work in kind of the plant world here locally. So, you know, we kind of make up these utopian ideas of the future, and Hassan's also done that. Hassan's really good at kind of both digging through the archives. I would almost call him kind of like a you know, like a cultural anthropologist or something like that. Like, he's really good at kind of digging in the archives and then building these kind of like future worlds of what the world is that he would like to kind of create, or the world that he would like to see out there. And we design them in a way that looks like they might have been designed back then when those ideas maybe first started kind of bubbling up a little bit. So they have this kind of strange quality to them that feel both retro in one sense, and at the same time, they're kind of these future ideas. And yeah, it's just a sort of a fun space to kind of be in. And I think for us, it's really about, you know, just practicing like a little bit more of a hopeful future. You know, I always kind of play with this idea that, you know, a lot of the reality that we're living in today, I guess, politically speaking, feels like fiction. It feels like it's actually like really fucked up and it shouldn't be the case. And you're sort of like, is this real? You know? And it's interesting that we are making up these ideas that are fiction, but that shouldn't be. They should be just be real. And it's, in some ways, it's kind of just getting to level ground. This idea that it's all about, you know, it's in some ways we're not even asking for anything extra. We're just you know, it's just about getting just a level, like a level playing field, I guess, if you will. So I think that's what really the root of all the designs and things that we do is really about that, more than anything else. You know, the Earth Embassy shirt, that's something that we created right in the beginning of quarantine. I think, at least for me, I was kind of struggling with sort of, you know, as I'm sure a lot of us were, but struggling, and maybe still are, just the state of the world a little bit in terms of, you know, things feeling obviously very dire and heavy, and but also just looking at the planet in terms of what we were doing, the election coming up, and, you know, it just feels like things are closing in a little bit. And I think the Earth Embassy shirt specifically was about kind of celebrating, just going back just to the basics and just kind of celebrating, you know, like this idea that the Earth is our embassy and it is supposed to be our safe space and we're supposed to take care of it back. And, you know, and also this feeling that we were kind of living in our own, like even this, you know, like as if we're like, you know, communicating with each other through like our own spaceships, you know, like you're in yours and I'm in mine. And we're using this contraption to kind of communicate, and playing around with that idea a little bit, this idea of like an embassy, this idea of travel, this idea of still this need for humans to kind of connect with each other, and to do so by any means necessary. You know, I know in the beginning of quarantine, I was FaceTiming all the time with people, and, you know, I was kind of freaked out a little bit, and it was just this way of like really just staying connected, you know, to your world. And there's kind of beauty in that, you know? So in a way, those shirts were about kind of a celebration of space, your own personal space. How do you make your own personal space your own? How do you make your own personal space, you know, your temple? How do you make it your spiritual space? How do you make your own space your education space? How do you make it a space that you still get exercise in, that you know, all these things that we have to now think about. And in a way, that series was kind of about that, you know? And so, you know, a lot of times when we, Total Luxury Spa is kind of the umbrella, or kind of like the mother brand, I guess you could say. And then these ideas are almost like these silos, and some silos will have, you know, one or two shirts, and other ones might turn into a whole other kind of thing. So for instance, with the Crenshaw Wellness series, you know, we've kind of put it on the back burner a little bit. You know, when you design anything, when you put something out into the kind of cultural cosmos, it has a certain meaning then, and then that meaning also changes over time because of all the other elements around it. And I think with Crenshaw Wellness, it's something that we've been thinking about, you know, how can we do more with it? And so we've been talking about turning that into, this is kind of the first time I'm saying it out loud, I guess publicly, but you know, turning it into a nonprofit, or some way of actually like it fully giving back. So this idea that it would only pop up, it would be its own company, it would only pop up just to back some sort of cause. So say Crenshaw High School needs a new garden, we would design a series of shirts around that, and all the proceeds would just go towards that garden. Or if there's someone in the neighborhood that has a mom and pop shop that's struggling, it would pop up, you know, the shirt would come out, and then all the proceeds would just go to that one thing, and then it would go away. And this idea that like it would only work for the people, like it's really one-to-one. So there's no other series, like there's nothing else except for like whatever it's needed at that moment, it would just design around that and then disappear. And so we've been working on that as a separate kind of brand. So we're going to break it off just because that had so much popularity, and we want to just give it the respect, and also figure out a way to just give it fully back to the people as much as possible. So I don't know, all these ideas, you know, they're really experiments. Like they're just us trying to navigate the world in a new way and in a way that we want to kind of see it play out, you know?
Yeah, and what I really appreciate and I love about your work is that it's still grounded in your community. It's speculative fiction, but it's definitely, you create the reality. Like I wanted to ask you about, you had a proposal for a children's meditation program at Hillcrest Elementary School. Why did you want to start something like that? Like why?
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like the clothing brand, like you keep saying, it's more than just about the clothing, right?
yeah, the clothing thing, to be totally honest with you, is like one part of a much larger, I guess, trajectory that I personally believe in. I know Hassan also believes in, and my studio is just kind of based around. And it's not like I've had this idea forever. It's something that I've also developed over time. I guess there's a couple elements to that. One is, you know, the way culture works these days and the way the speed of information works these days is that everything is accessible to everyone. And I think, you know, it's easy to sort of take an aesthetic of something and use it for something else and put it out there. And there's all sorts of like appropriation and all of that. And I think one really important element is that you're always giving more than you're taking. I think no matter what in life, period, not just in terms of graphics, not just in terms of design or art, things like that, is that you're always like, you're adding more into the equation than you're taking from the equation. And I think if we're able to do that in all of our lives in different ways, that we'll just be that much more better off. I think, you know, the world is kind of the way it is at the moment because there's just been a lot of taking. And I think it's important to kind of give more than take. So, you know, part of it is also that if we're going to be in conversation around these things and design around these things, it's also important that we are giving more than we're taking. So, you know, my studio is where we're located now is right on Exposition, right behind Dorsey High School. And I've been here now for about 13, 14 years. And, you know, I'm very much involved in the neighborhood, both in my own personal way in terms of friends and family and all of that. And then separate to that, just involved in terms of like what's happening in the neighborhood. And, you know, there's a bunch of elementary schools around here, specifically Hillcrest Elementary and Baldwin Hills Elementary down the street. And we started early days of Total Luxury Spa. I was mentioning kind of the publication side of it, and then also the sort of talk series and the film series and all of that. But in the early days, we started doing a weekly meditation workshop here for the community. And this was like, I want to say maybe 9 years ago now. This was a while ago, and 8-9 years ago. And it would be in the studio here. We would do it early on Wednesday mornings. And it would be open to everyone in the community, friends, colleagues, you know, and we would have breakfast served. It was free to everyone. There was an instructor. And, you know, it went on for some time. I want to say it went on for almost 2 years in the beginning, where, you know, you never knew who was going to show up for it. It was like families from the neighborhood. It was kids in the neighborhood. It was design colleagues that I know from work. It was just kind of a mix. And it was really interesting. And everyone just got a ton out of it. I mean, there was times where, you know, the room it was heavy. There was times where like the room would be crying by the end of it. There's times where people felt alive and happy and ready to start their day and the rest of the week because of it. It was just this beautiful thing. And everything started there. Like really, if I dissect all of it and all the different components, and a lot has happened since then, everything really started with that. Just seeing, you know, how much people kind of take away from meditation and dropping in and all of that. And I think we've, for a long time, have wanted to do more meditation workshops. I know what meditation has done for me. And in terms of, you know, things like trauma and all of that, it's just a way of kind of just landing and kind of quieting the noise inside your head. And, you know, I've always wanted to bring that to kind of different spaces in every which way. I think it should be in every school. It should be taught to police officers. It should be all of that. So there was a project that we started with a group of kids in the neighborhood called Tropics. And we did a kind of a short-term education series and kind of a pop-up at the Underground Museum. And with that was also a meditation series that we brought, and that's still going today. So that's every Monday evening at the Underground Museum. Currently it's online, but 40, 50 people show up for that in person every time we do it at the Underground Museum. It's a beautiful thing. It's now funded by the Underground Museum, which is amazing. We funded it for the first, I want to say 4 years. And with that, I also wanted to be able to bring that to local elementary schools. And so we started talking to Hillcrest Elementary specifically. They asked us to come in and talk to the kids on a career day, just in terms of like career and the clothing brand and everything else, and the juice stuff for Tropics and Commonwealth Projects and everything that we're doing kind of in the neighborhood. They wanted us to come and talk to the kids, and we did. And at the end of one of those sessions, I was talking to the principal, and I said, hey, I have this idea. I would love to do it. I'm extremely naive when it comes to like the hurdles I would have to jump through to kind of get it, put through to, LAUSD. I have no idea like what you need, but like we would help come up with the funding for it. And so he's like, yeah, let's try a pilot program. And so we did a pilot program for about 3 months, and it was beautiful. It was, we had the kids fill out journals. We saw the progress. Sorry, you there?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Did I cut out? It was incredible just seeing the change. It was both third grade and fifth graders. I was there, it was 2 days a week. I was there both days for those 3 months. And it was really kind of like a pilot program to see like if it would work, to see what worked, what was the curriculum, and we built it every week for the kids and for the teacher and things like that. The teacher got really involved as well. Both teachers got really involved. And it was something that was incredible just to see kind of blossom. And since then, obviously COVID has hit, but since then, it's something that we really want to bring back to the local elementary schools. It's something that works. I was blown away by the progress. I mean, there was times I was brought to tears in the classroom where it was just seeing some of these kids that I was like that when I was younger, extremely, say hyper, or maybe, having a difficult time focusing and things like that. And just seeing a lot of these kids just land and just how much they needed it and communicate with each other and communicate with the teacher and all these things from meditation. And it's kids are a lot different when it comes to meditation, obviously, than adults. They have a lot less sort of like inner discipline to sit there quiet for however much time. And, so we learned and kind of implemented all these incredible exercises, from there's one where, all the kids lay on their backs and they all get kind of like this sort of little figure kind of toy stuffed animal, and they put it on their stomachs and they just watch it. They breathe and they just watch that animal kind of go up and down, and just a way of kind of like landing a little bit. And there was beautiful, just incredible work that was done in those 3 months. And so now we're looking for funding to try to get that kind of off the ground. And I think we're going to help fund it, obviously, but I would love to see it as a permanent kind of, a permanent element in these elementary schools. Sorry, I lost track of the question a little bit. But I feel like
it seems to be all connected, like the idea of giving back. And I appreciate you sharing about your neighborhood too, because it's Lemire Park area, Crenshaw. There's so much happening as far as culturally. I know you've been giving back recently to the Umoja Center, to the World Stage, and also to Lauren Halsey's project, Summit Everything Community Center. So can you share a little bit about because it seems like it's like a network that like a lot of people are giving back to their community. And I wonder, do you think is this kind of like a part of like a continuous legacy of community oriented art spaces? Or do you think it's accelerated also because of the development that's happening, because of the train station, the development in Inglewood with stadiums and all of that? Do you think there's some sort of connection? Or
that's an interesting question. I feel like it's in some ways it's almost like a Mike Davis answer, maybe. I think those two things go hand in hand, to be totally honest with you. And in some ways I'm putting my the Commonwealth Projects sort of hat on in terms of like, I don't know, just the kind of cultural approach. I think the speed of culture and the speed of information has now made all of these things accessible to everyone. So information accessible to everyone. And with that, there's kind of, everyone's kind of on the same page in a way, and as much as neighborhoods are changing, things like the train and the stadium and all of that stuff, and gentrification and the redevelopment of all these different neighborhoods, which is really scary and unfortunate in a lot of ways. I think people are aware of it, and as much as that stuff is at hyperspeed, so is kind of like the answer, if you will. So is kind of like, what the people can kind of do about it is also kind of at our fingertips, And I think, for instance, with the Emoja Center, we help them develop and put together a bit of strategy. We worked with them for some time now, and we've done a bunch of different projects with them. We helped them raise some money during the last fundraiser, but also we help them, fight back against this group called the CIM Group, a big real estate development company here locally that's been doing some pretty scary stuff. And we helped them put together a whole campaign, and they dropped they were about to buy the Crenshaw Mall. They dropped the sale. Because of the amount of noise that we were making, which is amazing. And I'm not saying us, I just mean like the community as a whole. Mm-hmm. And, that's kind of beautiful to see, but it's definitely like an uphill battle, and it's a big battle to have. And there's some other things that we're doing that are about to come out, that are also kind of to help in that battle a little bit, and I'm in the space of privilege, and I want to be able to use my privilege to help kind of combat a lot of these things that I don't agree with, at the end of the day. That's from my own standpoint. As far as the Emoja Center and the World Stage and Lauren Halsey's program goes, those are all, I think of all these things as like family, in the sense that, I rarely meet someone or start working with someone that I don't continue kind of a relationship with. These are all people that I believe in, and I still want to have around me in my life, and I want to be around theirs, and I want to be able to give back, and I want to be able to kind of show up in all these ways, and hopefully that stuff all kind of, it both kind of pays off in terms of like the help that I can bring to it, but also just like, it's also just the way I want to live my life, I guess. And the World Stage is an incredible place in Leimert Park that, they've been around for a long time, and they basically live check to check, and they've been doing incredible work, and they provide music education programs for the community, for the kids in the community. If those kids don't have $5 to get in, they just let them in. They've been doing that forever, And so we were really excited that, in the beginning of the BLM stuff, we also wanted to step up and see what we could do. Not just in terms of like a big kind of fundraiser for some entity that we don't know, on the other side of the world, which is great, but we wanted to see what we could do here locally, and we wanted to see what we could do without selling a single shirt. Our whole thing was just like, let's just get the people behind these causes, educate people, and also, just bring a little bit of awareness. And I think it's been incredible to watch, because a lot of the people that donated to those things are still very involved. That they're on weekly calls with the Emoja Center, seeing how they can help in the community. They signed up for kind of monthly contributions in terms of being able to support those spaces. And that's an incredible thing to see, So, I think through those campaigns, we also got the attention of some bigger kind of commercial entities and companies that, we basically told them, look, if you want to show up, you got to throw down, and they did, and it's and without asking for anything in return, and to see these spaces be able to not only cover rent but to put those funds behind programming, and to see them really blossom, to me, that again is just getting to like base level. Like, no one's asking for anything extra. It's just like just getting to base level. So whatever we can do to kind of help those spaces get there is incredible, especially right now as things are getting so developed. We don't want to see those places disappear. They're doing incredible work in the community, and work that's going to need to be done even if the area kind of gets redeveloped and things like that. We're going to try to fight to push back against those developments, but even if that change comes, those things are still needed. So they're doing the real work. And so anything that we can do to kind of help back them, we want to do. And at the end of the day, I've also just always been, I don't know, a people person. Like I enjoy meeting people and developing relationships and keeping those relationships going and things like that. So I think, especially around the neighborhood and stuff like that, I want to continue doing that and seeing how I can contribute and we can contribute. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to see, especially like, I live in East LA right now. So from the East Side, seeing what y'all are doing, it's like a really cohesive community. And it seems like there's a lot of power in that. So I just wanted to say, it's beautiful to see. Like
I appreciate it.
Y'all like as, reference points for the rest of the country, really. Like I think.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. We have a big collection coming up, which maybe I'll talk a little bit about, but it's around the idea, and it's definitely new for us. It's around the idea of water, and specifically in LA. I know there's a lot of politics, again, going back to Mike Davis, but there's a lot of politics around kind of, the history of how we gotten the water that's here currently, kind of hydropolitics, and the science of water, the health benefits of water and things like that. So we have a big collection coming up kind of around that whole theme. And it's something that we're really excited about, and it's going to kind of parallel the election a little bit. So there'll be some sort of parallels there as well. So it's something, that we're looking forward to.
Awesome. So I just have maybe a couple more questions.
Sure.
Go on. I feel like there could be a whole episode on a bunch of different things, a Commonwealth Project.
Sure.
Your work with them, the exhibition design, videos, the whole creative studio, like that. It's so fascinating to me. But yeah, unfortunately, we probably only have like 5 more minutes. So I just wanted to ask a couple more questions just based around some of the conversations we've been already having. So you do a lot of work with the Underground Museum, right? And I know you were personal friends with Noah Davis and Khalil Joseph. Can you just share a little bit about the significance of that community that y'all are creating with the Underground Museum and some of that collaborations also?
Yeah, absolutely. The Underground Museum is kind of my home away from home. It's Noah, Khalil, Faith, Karan, everyone in the family there is like my second family. And I've grown up with them, and Noah was one of my best friends. And it's interesting because there's also a lot of parallels with the way Noah navigated the world, and I'm sure I probably did it subconsciously a little bit, but the way Noah navigated the world and Total Luxury Spa in some ways, in terms of the way he viewed the world and wanted to give back and just engage with people and kind of really put people on and help put people on, and just use any power that he had to kind of connect with people. And yeah, with the Underground Museum, we do all their exhibition designs and a lot of their design work. We just put out a Noah Davis book that just came out here somewhere. It was just released. It was Werner Gallery around the painting show that was there, and that same show is gonna come to the Underground Museum as soon as they open back up, sometime I think middle of next year, or early next year. Yeah, and I mean it's incredible. I mean that space is so unique and important, specifically because geographically speaking, where it's located, the access to extremely high level art that maybe wouldn't be able to be shown other than kind of like a major museum that you'd have to probably pay to get into, that's far away. And so it's incredible that they have a space that is not only showing big important artists, but they're also kind of in conversation with those pieces. They create conversation. I think that's probably one of the most important pieces of the Underground Museum, is that they're constantly creating the conversations around those things, not just in terms of the art that's being shown, but conceptually the idea behind the art and the idea behind the space. And they have all sorts of education series there. They do these film workshops. I mean, the list kind of just goes on. And it's really a family space. And I don't mean that just by the immediate family that started it, but I mean, when you go to that space, you're immediately in the family. Like, you can go and hang out and meet everyone that works there. And like, you can go and just kick it there and, you know, hang out in the garden in the back and get to know everyone. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is like, I have some new friends in the community. And there's something beautiful about that. It's like just a really big open space. And that's Noah at the end of the day. I mean, it's a whole family, but Noah was just so like, he wanted to hang out with everyone. He wanted everyone to come over and just like, you know, barbecue at the museum. And that was just Noah. And I think the space has really harnessed that and kind of ran with it, you know? So with their partnership with Mocha, and you know, they have some incredible work that's shown there, and you know, they're really family friends of theirs that kind of end up showing the work, a lot of these big artists. So there's just something really unique about that space. It feels very human when you go there. A lot of museums are really cold, kind of white wall, you know, the artwork, and you know, there's some sort of there's a person standing in the corner, some sort of security guy or whatever. But like, you go to the Underground Museum, it feels kind of like it's a mix between someone's house and then like there's the family's there, and then they're showing this incredible work, and you're like, it's just a vibe, you know?
Yeah, I love it there. I went to some of their summer film screenings.
Yeah.
And the patio is just so, it's like really beautifully designed and comfortable.
It's amazing. So they're going to do it. There's a bunch of stuff coming up specifically in the patio and the film series and stuff like that they're going to be doing next year. That's going to be really special.
Nice. Cool. Well, I'm just going to ask one more question. I have like
of course.
Recurring question that I ask some of the guests. And it's about monuments and memorializing certain parts of LA. And this is also kind of influenced by Mike Davis. We keep referencing Mike Davis. So what is there like an intersection in LA that you would memorialize or maybe put a monument on, something maybe that references a part of hidden history of LA, or maybe something more personal?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think a lot of the monuments that I would have maybe said are probably gone, unfortunately, which is kind of fucked up and sad, but I sort of, and maybe this is just right now, but there's something about the LA River that I find so twisted, and at the same time just brings up all these conversations. And, you know, it kind of acts as a border. It kind of, it's almost like this network through Los Angeles. It's definitely not a river, you know, there's nothing kind of really natural about it other than the water that moves through it. And even that has a kind of a dark, twisted history. So there's something about the LA River that it would probably be something around the LA River. I'm not sure exactly what it would be.
Any particular place?
Oh man, I just remember like being a kid, and my brother and I would like, I mean, it's crazy that my parents even like let us do it, but I must have been like 10 years old and getting on a bike. I must have been like 9 maybe, and getting on a bike. And we had this whole route that we would take through the LA River, and we would ride all the way to the 405 and the 101. And we would go where the dam is.
Oh,
you know where the big dam is?
Florida Dam?
Yeah, we would go behind the dam, and there was like just this big open kind of like lagoon, and we were like little kids, and we would just go and play in it all day. It was so grimy, and we would just play in it all day and like catch crawdads and all this stuff. And there's something about it where like I got to know the city in a way because the LA River, and not that it, like somehow I knew that or anything like that, but it was somehow like my compass or something like that. Like from the LA River, I could kind of figure out as a little kid like where I was somehow, you know.
Yeah,
it was really strange, and it goes everywhere, you know. But I don't know, for some reason it just takes me back. I kind of have like a nostalgic feeling, and no matter where I am in remotely close to the LA River, somehow it's like a weird nostalgic thing, and at the same time it has like a really crazy history. So I've always been kind of fascinated with it. That's the first thing I guess that comes to mind.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the foundation of the city itself, the backbone of the city. You know?
Yep. And it's also, just to circle back, it's probably also a good reason that when, you know, in City of Quartz, and Mike Davis kind of talks about the LA River a little bit, I was like, for me, it was just like, oh my God, someone else is fascinated with this. Amazing, you know, as like a young 20-year-old reading that book.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all these answers, and for taking the time to sit down and talking with us.
Yeah, thank you, man. I'm I feel really thankful that you've, asked me to come on and that you've asked us to talk and given Total Luxury Spa a platform.
Definitely, yeah. I really respect the work you do, and like I mentioned, there's so much more to talk about Commonwealth Projects itself. What y'all have done is incredible. You've worked with the top museums in the world, some of the most well-known artists and musicians. So yeah, you're really like a cultural powerhouse. So I'm really honored that you spoke with us today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks again for having me on.
So ends another episode of Libros Schmibros, recorded at the bilingual nonprofit Libros Schmibros Lending Library in Boyle Heights. By all means, follow us online in all the old familiar places, or email us via info@libroschmibros.org. By the way, we couldn't do this podcast without the whole Libros team: Cuauhtemoc, Colleen, Diana, and Alberto. And all of them would kill me if I didn't add this. Please consider visiting libroschmibros.org, hitting the donut button, the donate button, and giving us a gift. We put good free books into people's hands 5 days a week here at Libros, right across from Mariachi Plaza, up in the old Boyle Hotel. I'm David Kippen, and there'll always be a free book for you, and thousands more to borrow here at Libros Schmibros.